Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy Anubis the Game Archer here with a brand new video for you guys today. Welcome to the channel. Be all feeling good, smelling good. If you're not feeling good, hopefully this video makes you feel better. It probably won't. If you're not smelling good, go wash your ass. Every Monday, Thursday we stream on Twitch. So link to that in the description box below. That sounded like terrible. Do all the things the algorithm likes. You know what the algorithm likes. Just do those things. But today's video, we're going to talk about Ubisoft. We're going to talk about basically what went wrong with Ubisoft, and this is just an encompassing video for the entirety of their IPs and the Ubisoft name and all the things that goes on with the company. And the reason why I'm making this video is because of the last videos that we made, which is about Skull and Bones. You can check that out at the end of this video. It'll be attached at the end with the end cards. And Skull and Bones looks like shit, so we're not even gonna like beat around the bush or anything like that. Skull and Bones looks like shit. And if you want to talk about Ubisoft, and it's kind of like an unfortunate conversation to have, because those who are new around here, we like to have gaming discussions, game conversations around here, or just in general life conversations and life discussions around here and on my Twitch page. So when it comes to Ubisoft, there's this kind of like general consensus when it comes to gamers and how they view it, that Ubisoft is basically the kings of mediocrity. They're a company who never makes like outright bad video games. They just do enough to where you want to play it, but they do so little to where you don't care to play it, which is a weird thing to say. I know. The other thing about Ubisoft is they're basically also the kings of a design philosophy where their concepts or idea is ocean wide but puddle deep. And that's, you think about that, like it makes your heart kind of like drop, because what that tells you is Ubisoft likes to have a lot of grandiose ideas, a lot of these amazing concepts and designs, and they'll showcase these things to you in their trailers, and they'll tell you what their plans are, and you're like, yo, this is amazing, this looks cool as shit, I can't wait for this game. And then the game comes out and you play, or you see a gameplay trailer and you're like, this looks like shit. So what Ubisoft ironically reminds me of Lionhead Studios. For those who don't know what Lionhead Studios are the original developers of the Fable games, and their boss, their designer, was Peter Molyneux. And for those who have been around for a long period of time, you know that name very well, because this is the king of giving you all the promises and tell you, like, he's like a politician. He'll tell you all the sweet things in your ear to make you want to like vote for him, but then doesn't deliver at all. That was Peter Molyneux. He'll be on stages of E3 and at other conferences and tell you all these new ideas for Fable games, and then you'll play the next Fable game and be immensely disappointed. That's Ubisoft as an entire publishing company, as an entire, all the development teams. Is their Peter Molyneux, their Lionhead Studios. They're lying to you. Like they literally will give you all these plans and ideas and tell you what their goals are, and it all sounds like sweet honey words that's going to make you drop your pants, but it ends up being this thing that you look at with a side eye disgust, because Ubisoft doesn't know how, or I won't even say they don't know how, they don't care to produce what they promise, because Ubisoft, for all intents and purposes, they're okay with the status quo. They're okay with making just enough money to justify the game that they made. They don't really care about being game of the year. They don't really care about being amongst people's favorite games of all time. They don't really care about being viewed in a high regard amongst publications and other studios and other reviewers and things like that. They don't care about being the top viewed game on Twitch. They just care about making that bottom line money, and that's it. Ubisoft is one of the prime examples of a tone-deaf company who only cares about money. They don't care what the players want. The players want a new Splinter Cell game. Ubisoft throws Sam Fisher into Rainbow Six Siege. Why? They didn't want Sam Fisher in Rainbow Six Siege. They wanted Sam Fisher in its own game. There's been a new Splinter Cell game since Blacklist, which released in 2013. Literally, we're in August. Blacklist released August 20th, 2013. So in almost 10 years, we have not seen a new Splinter Cell game, and yet they'll throw Sam Fisher into Rainbow Six Siege. Their live service game that prints the money. They had plans for Prince of Persia remake, which would have reignited people's interest in Prince of Persia franchise. They canceled it. because they want to focus, air quotes, on Skull and Bones, the game that looks like it's going to be trash. A game where when they first showed Skull and Bones off years ago, it looked really good. And this comes from someone who doesn't like pirates. I don't care about Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I don't care about pirate movies in general. I don't care about pirate games. My least favorite Ubisoft games are the ones that involves pirate-related themes, aka Black Flag. I don't think Black Flag is a bad game before anyone freaking says it, but I just didn't care for the pirate theme of Black Flag. Even in one of my top 3 favorite Assassin's Creed games, which is Assassin's Creed 3, I hated the naval stuff. Now I do like the naval stuff in Odyssey and Origins, so but they're not pirates. But anyways, I don't want to get on the tangent about pirates. When we first saw Skull and Bones, the idea there was like they're basically making an expansion. Well, taking the bones for all purposes of Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 4's naval combat and making it its own game. And it looked promising, it looked interesting, it looked like something people will be into. Then they had this idea of what if it's a 5v5, kind of, multiplayer component to it as well. Kind of similar thing about For Honor when it comes to Ubisoft and their 5v5 competitive game mode, but with ships. For all intents and purposes, Skull and Bones looked promising. It looked like a good game, like all Ubisoft games do. All Ubisoft games, when they first tell you about them, look promising, and then we actually finally got to see gameplay, like actual gameplay of what Skull and Bones look like right now, and it just looks like garbage. It looks like a game that is going to be thrown out mostly just to try to make as much money back as possible. And the reality of it is Skull and Bones is only releasing because Ubisoft has to release it. They're not releasing Skull and Bones because they want to. They're not releasing Skull and Bones because they want to meet a financial quota. They literally have to release Skull and Bones. They signed an agreement with the Singapore government to make sure that game comes out. Singapore foot the bill for a lot of the financials of Skull and Bones, and Ubisoft put a gaming studio in Singapore, as part of the deal as well. So Ubisoft literally has to release this game because the Singapore government is forcing them to. They literally are legally required to release Skull and Bones. So we're not even getting a video game that the developers and publishers even want to put out. We're getting a video game where they legally have to release it because they don't have a choice. If the Singapore government wasn't forcing Ubisoft to release Skull and Bones, there's a good chance this game would have got canceled. And when you think about that, that further makes you not want to play the game. Because that they didn't even want to release the game. There's former developers who got, because apparently there's a lot of bad press for Skull and Bones development. There's a lot of former developers who said there's a lot of racial tension, a lot of bullying, a lot of unfair pay, just a lot of toxic work culture. So you have people who left Ubisoft who are coming out and they're saying like, yo, this game lacks depth in every sense of what it aims to be. It lacks depth in story, it lacks depth in combat, it lacks depth in character creation, it lacks depth everywhere. And like when you see the gameplay, you're like, you know what? I can see what the developers are talking about. You don't even get off your ship. Literally, when it comes to boarding another ship, it's a cutscene. Boarding in the game is a cutscene. And if you play Odyssey, if you've played Origins, if you've played Black Flag, if you've played Assassin's Creed 3, you kind of like laugh at that. Think about how old Black Flag and Assassin's Creed 3 are, yet they're more advanced than Skull and Bones, which was releasing in 2022. But the thing about Skull and Bones is this is the issue with Ubisoft as a whole. It's not just Skull and Bones. It's not just the fact that there hasn't been a new Splinter Cell game since 2013. It's just Ubisoft as a whole company, this tone-deaf company who somehow escapes, the mass hatred that like EA gets or like Activision gets. They somehow escaped that, but yet they're so, like, in a way worse, because EA and Activision will throw out titles that you don't care about, but Ubisoft has some of the most amazing IP in gaming, but they're all just end up being mediocre video games as a whole. Like if you think about the IP that are under Ubisoft's banner, I said before that I play a lot of Ubisoft games. I own a lot of Ubisoft games. You would think that someone like me, and there's plenty of people who are like me who own a lot of Ubisoft games, will love Ubisoft. But we don't. We hate Ubisoft. We hate those suits. We hate Yves Guillemot and all of his lackeys. This isn't the developers' fault, because at the end of the day, the developers can only do what they're told to do by their corporate masters, essentially. When it comes to Ubisoft though, like Ghost Recon love Ghost Recon as a Ubisoft IP. It hasn't been good in a while because they decided to change the formula from what it used to be with like Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2, which when I was growing up, Advanced Warfighter 2, and Future Soldier were viewed as like these amazing top tier shooter experiences. And then Ubisoft's like, what if we just make these an open world Far Cry like game? It was like, oh great, they just ruined Ghost Recon. And Wildlands was playable, but then Breakpoint came out and it was like, what is this garbage? Like, this is just garbage. You know, then you have Splinter Cell, which again, we haven't had Splinter Cell games since 2013, but Splinter Cell, another legendary, amazing IP. You know, if you think of the word Tom Clancy and think of video games with that title, other than End War, all those Tom Clancy games are considered amazing IP that people love. But the biggest one being Rainbow Six, and again, Splinter Cell. But meanwhile, you know, they're lackluster. First of all, we haven't even had a single player Rainbow Six game since what, Vegas 2. You know, there was Rainbow Six Patriots which got canceled, and then the scraps of that turns Rainbow Six Siege, which isn't a single player game, it's a multiplayer game only. So, you know, you don't get that experience there. Then you have Far Cry. Far Cry, you know, became a massive hit with Far Cry 2, and then Far Cry 3 launched it into the fucking like stratosphere and popularity. And then you basically got what the modern action game formula is that every game now follows, including like Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. You know, the new God of War games, like that formula that those games follow is a Far Cry 3 formula. The same thing that the Assassin's Creed games now follow is that Far Cry 3 formula. Far Cry 3 was so successful to where it made modern action RPGs what they are, and Ubisoft knew that. So what they do? They copy pasted that in damn near all of their top IP. Every Far Cry game is basically the exact same game, just a different location with a different bad guy. The bad guy is just the main focus of Far Cry games, and that's every Far Cry game. Assassin's Creed has basically become, you know, essentially the exact same thing. You know, you had this semi-limited, you know, semi-linear but also open experience with a great story and great characters like, you know, Altair and Ezio, Denegton and Edward Kenway. You know, and even when it came down to like Arno, Unity wasn't even a bad game. It launched terrible, but like the actual story of Assassin's Creed Unity and the actual character Arno aren't bad. The dynamic between him and Elise is pretty good. Syndicate, which is probably like the most underrated Assassin's Creed game, is a pretty decent video game. Like, it's just a good game. You know, the Jack Trapper DLC is one of the top DLCs in Assassin's Creed. You know, and then after you have Syndicate, that's when you get like the big change of Assassin's Creed, where it becomes less Assassin's Creed and more Far Cry and more open world, which is where you get like Odyssey and Origins and Valhalla. Now, I said before, my top three is, you know, you have, you know, Assassin's Creed 1, Assassin's Creed 3. In that top three for me is also Assassin's Creed Origins. Origins is an amazing game. It's a phenomenal game. For all its purposes, Ubisoft hit it out the park in every single like way possible when it came to Origins. And Odyssey is also a great game. But we start to see Ubisoft show their true colors as a shitty developer and publisher with Valhalla, which is a bloated mess and it's trash. Valhalla has no redeeming qualities. Valhalla is the worst Assassin's Creed game, in my opinion, as someone who's played all the console Assassin's Creed games. This is one of my favorite game franchises of all time. Valhalla's trash. It's just a garbage game. And it's the issue with it is Ubisoft has this thought process now because they saw how much people love The Witcher 3 and they love like these other long games, where Ubisoft's like, hey, clearly these gamers like their games to be massively long and have all this extra content. Let's make the next Assassin's Creed game have all this extra content and be super long, even though it lacks any kind of substance. Valhalla has so much stuff to do, but all the stuff that you do in the game is empty. You know, imagine the worst fetch quest in Skyrim. That's Valhalla for 80 hours. Pretty much. It's a bloated mess with no substance and lacks engagement. It's terrible storytelling. You know, when you think about the other Assassin's Creed games, they do so much well. They tell you there's amazing story with an amazing main character. The main character is always amazing in Assassin's Creed. Doesn't matter which one you play. You play Assassin's Creed Liberation, Aveline's great. You know, it doesn't matter which one you play. people, opinions are opinions. You have people who don't like Evelyn, you have people who don't like Edward Kenway, you have people who might not like Evie Fry and Jacob Fry, you have people who might not like Arno or then the Gay Tone. People might not even like Altair. Never met anybody who doesn't like Altair, but I'm sure there's someone out there who doesn't like Altair. But for the most part, in my opinion, every Assassin's Creed game has had a great main character, including the ones like Assassin's Creed India, Assassin's Creed China, Assassin's Creed Russia. Not Eivor. Eivor sucks. I don't care about Eivor. And then when he has the supporting characters, every Assassin's Creed has supporting characters who you grow towards. You know, Assassin's Creed 4, for example, you grow towards Alawale, so much so they gave him his own DLC. You know, like when you played Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood and Revelations, Da Vinci, like, Da Vinci was like your bro in those games, and there's other characters, but that's the one we're gonna mention. And Assassin's Creed 1, you had you had all the other assassins were well developed and good, especially like I forgot his name, but the one who you meet at the beginning of the game and you cause him to lose his arm. I forgot his name, but he's a great character. I couldn't think of a single supporting character in Valhalla right now, like not one, because none of them are important. Even when it comes to like historical figures, Assassin's Creed's always been about having like real historical figures in their games. I don't think the ones in Valhalla matter. Like I feel like the ones in Valhalla are boring characters and no one gives a shit about. And that might sound rough. People who come from the Scandinavian parts of the world, or if you come from the UK and you might feel like a little more close towards those characters. They're boring and uninteresting. And that's it. That in Valhalla, like I said, just doesn't have any redeeming qualities, and it's so much so to where even Ubisoft decides that instead of just focusing on the actual story of Valhalla and the area of Valhalla and historical figures, focus more on the Norse, the Norse pantheon. Your character is taking some shrooms and whatnot, becoming freaking Odin. And now you're dealing with Thor and Hela and all these Nord gods instead of playing Assassin's Creed. And that's also where the issue Assassin's Creed has like become, because when Assassin's Creed games, you're this stealth based, not entirely linear, but a little open linear kind of game with a lot of action. Not even a lot of action, there's a lot for Assassin's Creed back in the day where it was mostly you're doing tail missions, you're doing eavesdrops, you're doing things where you have to worry about your notoriety and things like you play it's like a real stealth game, like you're this actual assassin. And then it went from that to now you're fighting gods. Like think about Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious went from racing to being in space, and you're like, what the fuck happened? How do we go from street racing to being in space? That's Assassin's Creed. How do we go from as Altair and as Ezio and as Gaeton and you're slow walking around and assassinating these big figures to or fighting a big ass freaking like Minotaur and things like that? It got to a point where even with the last 3 games, as much as I love Origins and Odyssey, you're not even an assassin in any of these games. Like the last 3 games, you're not even an assassin. Literally, in Origins, you become an assassin. Like there's a Hidden Ones DLC, and that's basically where the assassins, basically get started. The assassin as a Brotherhood, as an organization, gets started in the Hidden Ones DLC, and they call themselves the Hidden Ones. In Odyssey, Cassandra and Lexios aren't assassins. They might become some down the line, or someone who's a descendant from them might become an assassin, but they themselves aren't assassins. Eivor isn't an assassin. There's assassins in the game. There's an assassin bureau. There's an assassin who you talk to and do missions for. These boring ass missions for, but not assassins. Assassin's Creed has become more of a title for other like this. We're going to do these grandiose things, these massive blockbuster things, and just put the name of Assassin's Creed on it. But you're not really playing the same game you fell in love with. And that comment is basically all of Ubisoft's IPs. All of Ubisoft's legendary IPs is that comment. Is the name of what you fell in love with, but it's not the same game that you fell in love with. And Ubisoft has just missed the mark. They've missed the point. When it came to Watch Dogs, what even is Watch Dogs at this point? Watch Dogs 1, it went through all that drama when it came to the graphical downgrade, and then it released, and it was kind of a hollow, mediocre but sometimes good game. and then Watch Dogs 2 was actually a good game, and then Legions was just a mess, a live service empty mess. Again, a bloated pile of garbage, like Valhalla. It's like Ubisoft sees what other studios are doing and seeing what's successful in gaming, and trying to copy that, but not doing what made those games successful. You know, like they'll see these live service games like Destiny, which has been like one of the only successful live service games, the whole it's like Fortnite, and they'll see like, oh, it works for Destiny, let's switch to live service and just, you know, go with that. And it's like, it doesn't work. You know, you have to do more than what they're doing, and it's unfortunate because again, they have so many legendary IP, so where you sit here and you're like, I really wish Ubisoft just get it together. Like at this point, everyone's kind of hoping that someone buys them and just, you know, gets this shit together. At this point, people are like, can someone buy Ubisoft and, you know, right the ship? Because right now, no pun intended, when it comes to Skull and Bones, Ubisoft is a sinking ship, and it doesn't have to be. That's the thing about Ubisoft, it doesn't even have to be a sinking ship. It is literally just the suits have to stop being bitches. Like as fucked, as mean as that sounds, and as rude as that sounds, that's what it comes down to. Because they have the IP, they have the development talent, they just don't have the suits who give the developers the time to put out a good game and actually have those games stick to their roots. You know, because your roots is what's going to make you some money, because you're going to get your hardcore fan base back, and the casuals who are going to come back and see, interested in your games, are going to see exactly why those hardcore fans love that game franchise. And, you know, and it kind of sounds like Ubisoft is aware of that, because some of the rumors I've read about the next Assassin's Creed game, which is supposedly like based in Baghdad, supposedly from what I've read, that the next Assassin's Creed game is going to have you being in a more stealth oriented video game, and it's not going to be as open world as the last 3 games that have been. And it's like, well, Ubisoft, are you listening? Is like, is this a sign that the most tone deaf company in all of gaming is finally listening? Because that sounds great, going to Baghdad and freaking, you know, having a more stealth based Assassin's Creed game, because that's what Assassin's Creed should have always been. Now I love Odyssey and I love Origins, but, you know, I kind of miss, I've been playing on my live stream, again, the link type in description below, I've been replaying through the Ezio collection. So playing the Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations, and I'm probably end up replaying through Black Flag as well at some point. And I'm thinking Unity and Syndicate, so we might just replay through like most of the Assassin's Creed games on my live stream. And I've been playing, so we're replaying through the Ezio collection, and right now I'm on Brotherhood. And so I'm just sitting there playing the game like, yo, I miss this game being this way. I miss, you know, like even the most irrelevant things about the game, I miss having to like rip off pages of paper off walls to decrease my notoriety. I miss having to bribe people. I miss, you know, the annoying ass bars who like run up to you. I miss the how important the civilians were, because like for those who've been playing Assassin's Creed games since the beginning, it became a core component of the game to experience the civilians. So much so that when Unity got announced, it was a key component of Ubisoft Showcase to point out how many people were in Paris during that time frame. It was massive. There's a lot of people in Paris in the game, because we cared about that. We cared about, you know, being able to walk around Paris and walk around Damascus and walk around, you know, Florencia and Venice and all these locations, and it felt like an alive world. It felt like we were experiencing, like we were the main character of the video game, but we're a part of this universe. We're not, you know, this god. Like, again, you started playing as a god in Odyssey. You're literally a demigod. Cassandra and Alexios are demigods, you know. And then freaking, you know, Eivor, you do some drugs, so you become Odin. It's like, we don't want that. We like being this human being who plays a role in this war between Templars and Assassins. And I felt like that kind of became like a background in the last 3 games. You know, like, this isn't like hatred towards Layla. I think Layla is actually a decent character and they can do a lot with her, but she doesn't get your attention the same way that Desmond did. We weren't introduced to her the same way we was introduced to Desmond. I think it would have been cool if Layla as a character was very similar to Desmond in the aspects of instead of, you know, we've been through his ancestry. Here's a new character going to go through her ancestry. She has her own support characters, kind of like how Desmond had. You know, I've got the guy's name, the British dude. You have Rebecca. Then you have freaking Christian Bale's character. Then you had your father as well, Wesley Miles. So like, there's all these support characters who are around Desmond, not people who are just in his ear, but they're around Desmond with him with any animus, and they're running from a Sturgo and all this stuff. And you don't have that with Layla. Layla, there's a voice in her ear, there's an earpiece, and someone's talking to her. There's no real personality in there for her character. She's just there. You know, there's no supporting characters with her either. And it just, they could do so much more with her character. And, you know, a lot of people feel like the reason why people don't like her character is because she's a female. It's like, no. It's not. That's not the reason people don't like Layla. It's literally just because she doesn't have a personality. It's literally because we got this character name again. Going to what I say about Desmond, and when it came to Layla, we didn't get any of that. You know, she's just here. You know, and it's like you want more. That's kind of like the gist of this video. This is a long ass video. This is it ended up becoming like a video essay essentially. But like, you just want more from the character. Like, you don't want the character to go away, you just want more from that character. And when it comes to the future of Assassin's Creed, hopefully it's more, you know, like the original games and less like the last 3 games. As much as I love Origins, as much as I love Odyssey, Assassin's Creed should not have, you know, deviated too far from its original path. You know, it shouldn't have deviated so much from what the idea there was. And when it comes to the other IP from Ubisoft, make the IP, make those games. Like, we shouldn't be sitting here in 2022 not knowing if there's ever going to be a new Splinter Cell game. Like, I think they said they're going to, but there's a difference between, you know, saying, hey, we'll make a Splinter Cell game, and hey, we've made a Splinter Cell game, or hey, it's this close. You know, like when Mass Effect 4, well, I don't want to call it Mass Effect 4, but when the Mass Effect game was announced, it was announced in a way of telling us, hey, it's in early development, but it's coming. When it came to Elder Scrolls 6, hey, it's here, but it's in early development. But look, they haven't seen it what's going to sell. They just say, hey, we're making a Sell game. They didn't go like, look, here's a trailer, here's the potential of what we're going to be doing with it, and then, you know, it's in early development. We didn't get that from Ubisoft. Ubisoft's a tone deaf company. When it comes to Ghost Recon needs to go through the exact same thing that you're going to do with Assassin's Creed. Go back to its roots. Go back to what Advanced Warfighter was. Rainbow Six. I think Rainbow Six should have 2 separate games. There should be the siege aspect of Rainbow Six, and then the actual Rainbow Six of Rainbow Six. You know, that story component that we loved about Rainbow Six, Vegas, and Vegas 2. Those are the big hits. There's more than just those 2, but those are the big hits. Vegas, Vegas 2. We want those experiences. But we also don't dislike Siege. So there should be a Siege 2. You know, or, you know, call it whatever you want to call it, but it's okay. Hell, I would be okay with doing a new End War game. I think End War, it might do better nowadays because RTS games are a bigger deal than they were back then. You know, they have the IP. Ubisoft has the IP. They have the developers. They don't have the suits who want to give the developers time. They don't have the suits who care about the consumers. It's not just Ubisoft. You know, I don't want this to come off like I'm only saying it's Ubisoft, because it's not. Square Enix is just like Ubisoft. Square Enix is Ubisoft Japan, basically, when it comes to how Square Enix works. They're garbage too. You know, EA is better than Square Enix. EA is better than Ubisoft. EA is trash. That's just tell you where Ubisoft and Square Enix is when trash is better than them. You know, but we don't talk about Ubisoft and Square Enix the same way we talk about EA and Activision, because EA and Activision have become the meme of bad company, of being a terrible company. We look at Battlefield 2042's release, we look at Battlefront 2's release, we look at, you know, all the Call of Duty games since Black Ops 3. You look at the state of World of Warcraft. Like, those games are so massive in popularity, it's where we focus a lot on Activision and EA, when Ubisoft and Square Enix are probably worse. There's more IP from Ubisoft that has us going what the fuck than IP from EA that has us going what the fuck. Madden is Madden. It's going to always be Madden. FIFA is going to always be FIFA. you know. But like when it comes to Ubisoft, those IP that I mentioned, you're just like, why can't you just make these games the way you used to? Because it hasn't always been this way. It hasn't. Something happened with Ubisoft after 2013 that just ruined the company. Like there was some kind of like shift in Ubisoft that was just like, we're done making good games. We're gonna make shit and put the IP names on that shit. People are gonna buy it because they love it. They love those IP. I love Assassin's Creed, so I bought freaking all the Assassin's Creed games. It works. You know, when people are hooked, you have that sunk cost fallacy, you have that love for a franchise, you just buy everyone that comes out. That's why I don't judge people who play Call of Duty games. It's like people are like, how come you still playing Call of Duty? It's like, if you've been playing my Call of Duty games since Big Red 1 at the least, you're not gonna like be done when it comes to Vanguard. Like you've been invested for so long. Sunk cost fallacy. You gotta keep going. You're playing Halo since Halo 1. If you're playing Halo since Halo 1, that's 20 years. You know, you're not gonna let Infinite go. You're just like, it's still Halo. You know, Battlefield 2042. You play Battlefield since 1942, or Battlefield, you know, Bad Company 2. You're gonna keep playing it because it's Battlefield. It's all you got. That's kind of like what it comes down to. It's all you got. But with all that said, it's just for me. This video's long no longer. My voice is starting to hurt. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Y'all stay safe. Being out to another being boy Anubis. Link is just below for my live stream. So every Monday, Thursday, 3 Eastern, 7 Eastern on Twitch. We're a variety streamer, but mostly for the most part, I focus more on my personality. So if you like hearing me talk here, you like hearing me talk on Twitch, I talk for 4 hours straight. We talk about anything and everything. There's no real topic we won't touch on my Twitch stream. To be honest with you, because it's all about having a conversation. But I've been your boy Nubis. I'm out of here. Y'all stay safe. Deuces.